My name's Max Peterson. I run the Amazon Web Services public sector business around the world. My team is incredibly thrilled that we've been able to work together with Injini to put together this evening that we really hope is interesting, thought-provoking, gives everybody a chance to learn and be curious, and hopefully think really big. And that's one of Amazon's core leadership principles. So if we can all come out of here with some big ideas that we can take action on to change the world, to make the world a better place, to deliver better outcomes for students, and to use technology to do that, it will have been a smashing success. I just want to say three things before I turn it over to Norm Driscoll, who's the leader of our public sector solution architecture group. One, a big thank you and a big shout out to Injini for putting this all together and for carrying off the second half of the evening where we're going to talk about the exciting cohorts. That's awesome. Two, I want to invite everybody to really participate. Norm is going to introduce shortly a panel of people that have a lot of interesting perspectives. They've got a huge set of experience, and they're ready to have a conversation with everybody here so that we can do just what I said earlier, learn, be curious, and deliver some results. And then the third thing is I just want everybody to have some fun and network with everybody here. One of the most powerful ways to bring ideas to life is to talk to people across the ecosystem. Amazon, we call it customer obsession, and we work backward from the customer to understand what it is that they really need so that we can then do our best to try and give them that service or that product. So that's all I have to say tonight. Do those three things, and you'll have a great evening. And with that, let me just bring up Norm Driscoll. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Max. You'll see that we like to keep it brief, so I'm going to keep it brief too. So we're all in this room today to transform the business of education, to drive better outcomes for all of our students, and to help them be well prepared for the careers of today and for the careers of tomorrow. And we've got a great panel who will be joining me on stage in just a moment to help us have that conversation. And there's some great experiences and some great experience in this panel. So please do be thinking about your questions and how we can really get them engaged. But I do understand that we are a little bit time constrained this evening. Apparently, there's some football match on later. So we're going to try and keep the pace going. And because of that, we're going to flip the panel structure around a little bit. And so we're going to start off with questions from the audience. So I'm going to talk for just a second about some of our education programs. And while I'm doing that, just be thinking about what questions you'd like to ask our panel when I welcome them up in just a second. So when we travel around the world and we speak to all of our customers in AWS, we hear one big message loud and clear coming back. When we say, what's holding you back in transformation? What we hear back is that it's the lack of a cloud-enabled workforce. And that's not just our experience. Okay, so LinkedIn published an independent report recently, and they said that for the third year in a row, the most demand skill was cloud and distributed computing. So we have a big opportunity, but a big challenge to meet that demand. And we love working with our customers and our partners to help them take advantage of these opportunities. And some of the way we do that is through our education programs. So I'd like to just run very quickly through those programs, and then we'll move on to our panel. So I hope you're thinking of questions while I'm talking. So to start off, AWS Educate is a learning and development program which makes available cloud credits, training, collaboration tools, content, and a jobs board for education institutions and for students. We have a number of learning pathways through AWS Educate. Most recently, we launched a pathway for Alexa voice technology and also for machine learning. We currently have over 1,500 education institutions globally using the program, and we've educated hundreds of thousands of students around the world. The second program is AWS EdStart, which is an education technology acceleration program. And this makes available technical training, promotional credits, marketing opportunities jointly with AWS. and expertise available from within our organization. So this program is to help really grasp that entrepreneurial spirit and help our startups take it to the next level and really scale and develop as their customer base does. And we're continuing to roll out EdStart in new geographies, and just last week we announced that EdStart was available in China, starting very shortly. We also have a well-established military education program. At AWS and at Amazon, we really value the experience and skills that military individuals can bring to the organization. So we have a military program for reservists and for veterans and for their spouses. And we have an Amazon objective to hire 25,000 military veterans and spouses by 2021, and then train another 10,000 in cloud technologies. And we're well on our way to delivering to that target. We've also rolled that out into the UK under a program called Restart, and we have over 1,000 military veterans trained in the UK already. We also have an initiative that was launched last year, and this is called We Power Tech. And this is an initiative to engage underrepresented communities in technology and help those communities understand the opportunities and skills that are required to take advantage of technology as a career. We're working with over 50 partners globally already as a way of delivering that mission. And then at our Global Public Sector Summit last month, we announced a partnership with the Northern Virginia Community College to launch the first Cloud Associate degree course. This is the first of its kind anywhere in the world, and we're going to be taking that collateral and that best practice and rolling that out globally. And then finally, just before I stepped on stage, I was made aware of a press release that's been announced just in the press today, and that's that AWS Academy for Cloud Computing is going to be available in a number of South African universities. And this is a course where we can help students prepare, learn the basics and principles of cloud computing, and ready them for a career in cloud. And that's going to be available in the University of Johannesburg, the Durban University of Technology, and the University of Cape Town. And so that's it from me. I hope you've been thinking of your questions. I'd love the panel to join me on stage now. So if we could have a round of applause for Glenn Guinness, Anthony Hales, Renee Sorrell, and Dr. Sumari Root. Great. Thank you all. So this is where we see if the audience has done its homework. I'd love to take a question to get this conversation around the transformation of technology and education kicked off. Otherwise, you need to hear one from me, and yours are bound to be better. Straight away to the right-hand side. Do we have a microphone? Thank you, Clive. Do we have a microphone that's on?
Testing, testing. My question for the panel is as follows. The next billion users of the internet are projected to come from the African continent. A lot of the solutions that we see being put into the marketplace in Africa are driven primarily with a Eurocentric point of view. What are we going to do to ensure that these solutions are driven with an African point of view? And I'm going to use fintech as an example, where we've seen solutions coming out of the African continent going global and really being innovative. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a fantastic question. Thank you for getting us started. And if I could ask our panelists just to introduce themselves, if it's the first time they've spoken this evening.
Thank you. Hi. So my name is Anthony Hales, and I'm the program manager for a company called Sofiso EdTech, which is a subsidiary of the Sofiso Learning Group. And basically, in a nutshell, what we do is we offer, through our brand Future Nation Schools, a African-centric education model based on a PBL, so a project-based learning approach. And to answer that question, from my end as Sofiso EdTech, we are developing EdTech tools with African pride and excellence as its backing, and implementing those in our Future Nation schools. but also with the view to go out into the global market and actually showcase what Africa has to offer from the EdTech space. Because I think we have a lot to offer, and with the students and the right amount of teacher support that we have, we can really actually put ourselves in the global sphere. So from my side, I'm not concerned about Africa. I think we've got an exceptional future with EdTech, and we as Sophiso EdTech are going to drive that approach. So that's my sort of, hope that helps.
Hi, evening everyone. So my name is Dr. Sumri Root. I wear two hats essentially daily. I am an academic at the University of Cape Town, and I also have the privilege of being the chairperson of the Silicon Cape Initiative. So just a quick show of hands, who knows the Silicon Cape Initiative? Excellent. Who loves tennis? Okay, not so great. But then we're going to get along just fine. It's great that so many of you are familiar with what Silicon Cape does. I think just building on what Anthony was saying, so from a Silicon Cape perspective, our slogan is Africa First. And to answer your question specifically, I think what we really should be doing is prioritizing that African problems are solved with African solutions. We often see a lot of foreign entrepreneurs coming in and wanting to save Africa or solve our problems when we actually have all the answers that we need ourselves. So that would be my answer to that.
Hi, I'm Glenn Gillis. I'm the CEO of Sea Monster, and we really want to be part of that new narrative, that new story that us as Africans are really telling ourselves in our own heads. I think stories are how you make sense of the world, and we at Sea Monster use animation because it cuts across cultures, literacy levels, language, and we can trap the essence of that new narrative and we can deliver that at scale. But I think we'll also agree that Africa's disease is hopelessness. People feel disconnected. They feel that through their own actions they can't influence the world around them. And one way to give people a sense of agency in their lives is through games. Games are a very powerful way to give structure and purpose and goals. And so we use games to teach principles from everything from physics to financial education and everything in between. So yeah, it's about story. It's about a new story that we need to craft ourselves, and about giving sense of power to people that they can make a difference. So completely agree with you on that.
Hi, I'm René Sorel. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Proversity.org. We're a learning-first technology facilitated e-learning company, and we're very much international. I think a very important point on this note is that the world is taking notice of the fact that there are 1 billion users and more coming from the African continent. And it's not something they're ignoring. We're currently involved in a project that's looking at contextualizing up to 20 to 30 international fintech courses, specifically in terms of the question, into African-focused context and language. And that's content and media-based, something Glenn will certainly have exposure with in the game industry. And I think it's important to know that international organizations aren't ignoring that space. They're coming to the table, and they understand that the context needs to be African. It needs to be South African for us here, and focused on the other countries for all of those who are part of groups like the Injini network.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for getting us started with a great question, sir. Who would like to go next? Yes, again, over on the right-hand side.
Hi there, my name's Adam. I want to know, how do we convince employers that online education is relevant? If I do a course online, how can I convince my potential boss that this course about JavaScript is going to mean that I'm a good JavaScript developer?
So thank you, Adam. I think that that's actually a very easy question to answer. Organizations are not the same as they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. They're learning organizations first a lot of the time. And the bigger organizations are starting to understand that that's an essential part of what they need to do to facilitate a quality workforce and to engender innovation in their own organizations. So I think it's a case of making sure that the company understands that they need to focus on the development of their staff, not only in terms of what that staff want, but in terms of the greater organization itself.
the best definition of learning that I know is that it's the ability to do something that you couldn't do before. And so while that piece of paper might still be relevant in some context, more and more companies are hiring for your ability to get work done, for your attitude, for your aptitude, rather than for your knowledge base. And so, yeah, the ability to have gone online and done a whole lot of courses is great. It shows a discipline, it shows, you know, a tenacity which companies are looking for increasingly. But I think that traditional education institutions are under major threat, to be extremely blunt. I think that they're a barrier to connecting companies with the audience, with the people that they want to employ. And, you know, you go and get a university degree, and that doesn't guarantee you anything. And in the context of South Africa, where we're fighting for fees must fall, I think we're fighting the wrong war. We're fighting the last war, not the next one. So I think that increasingly, and we see it even with Amazon, where their recruitment process, they hire all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life, where the piece of paper is really just one input into the hiring process. Apple does the same, Google does the same, and these are their employers of choice. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Adam. Do we have another question? Yes, over on the left. Just get a microphone to you quickly.
Hello. I just want to ask, how do you measure, like, from the learning technologies that you have, how do you measure that the students are learning? Because I'm feeling like if we keep on developing learning technologies without tracing the ones that we already have, how do you measure that? If to check this is really helpful, should we continue developing, or should we just keep pushing students to learn from the one that are already existing? And what is lacking from students? How do you cater for different student needs from the tools that we're developing? Thank you.
So that's actually a really good question. I was hoping someone was going to answer something like that, or ask, shall I say, because I'll answer it. So for us, from a Sofiso EdTech point of view, obviously we're very lucky as we have the Future Nation Schools brand. And effectively, when we create our EdTech tools, we create it alongside the teachers of our Future Nation schools. And I think that's where most, I won't say all of them, but I think most of our EdTech companies actually forget that the teachers and the learners are how and the way in which you need to develop your EdTech tools. And if you develop your EdTech tools from that perspective, the feedback that you get will be there naturally. So we have a couple of tools that are put into the Future Nation schools, which were actually built, if I could say that, obviously we developed it, but built from our teachers. So it had a specific outcome, and the outcomes are actually based against what we, or they as Future Nation schools require, but with the understanding that the EdTech tools need to be used in other aspects. So that's obviously another key that you need to sort of be aware of. But EdTech tools will only work if the teachers are on board with you. If the teachers don't believe in your product, they don't want to use your product, you'll never get the feedback or the outcomes you require. So for me, I think we need to keep the teachers heavily involved in this area in terms of developing EdTech tools. So.
Sorry, just to comment further on that, I do think that in general we need to basically relook at assessment across the board. So we think that we teach content, but we don't. We teach human beings. And we need to get into a space where we also recognize that each person is unique in terms of how they learn, how they prefer to learn, how they absorb, what is most effective for them. So to your point, I don't think that a one-size-fits-all is going to be the way to go into the future.
And to add to that as well, and I'm in danger here from dropping buzzwords, but I think it's important from a technical point of view to also think in terms of adaptive learning, machine learning, the emerging technologies that are supporting big data and analytics, and the fact that these technologies are far-reaching and involve every industry on the planet, especially education technology, which provides such a massive amount of analytical data that we can analyze it, and we can react to it, and we can implement effective adaptive learning. Using services like AWS's Kinesis automates a lot of that process and allows us to, react to certain things post the fact and not have to plan ahead and try and react understanding the implications of a certain event.
Quick one from me, and that is watch how they play Fortnite. And I mean that in that these games are extremely immersive and they're extremely complicated, and situational-based assessments, I think, are going to become more and more prevalent. We're going to see all of the stuff that Rene is referring to, and so how you interact in a complex world like that with many dimensions of decision making and critical thinking playing out simultaneously, I think are going to become more and more practical.
Great. So, I mean, if I could ask a question, so how will technology help the future of certification if we're moving away from the single piece of paper and into something which is much more ongoing and adaptive? How are you going to judge the relative capabilities of multiple applicants?
Sure. So I think this is a very interesting question because, as we were saying, that assessment certainly needs to be overhauled. The same goes for certification. And in the technology side of EdTech, we're seeing a massive push towards micro-credentialing. And that's especially in the form of badging. We work with Badger, an international implementation by a company called Concentric Sky that has worked with Mozilla directly to implement a connection between Backpack and education-based micro-credentials. That's expanding even more. We're now seeing a concept called open learning pathways, a new standard in the industry that allows connections between micro-credentials across different organizations and for many different reasons. So this idea that you need a piece of paper is not so real anymore. Now it's more about what you can put on your LinkedIn account and how that badge itself authenticates against a back-end service.
Yeah, and I just want to say something quickly, and I think we all need to understand this and you'll be aware of it, that we need more support from our local institutions. So SACWA, for example, need to actually get on board and understand that we are only going to progress, and because they have the power, if we could say that, in the industry in terms of qualifications, if they're not going to get on board with us and they're not going to support our EdTech initiatives and EdTech companies as a whole, we're not going to get anywhere because they're just going to stop us at every angle. So I think it's key for us to have these badges and have the online qualifications and your LinkedIn account looking very long and scrollable. But you need SACWA, you need the government, you need the local education departments to be on board with you and to support you. Otherwise, we'll just be, I was going to swear, but I shouldn't. So,
Very, very briefly to add to that, I think it's also an extremely, extremely important point that large educational organizations around the world are starting to support this idea of online micro-credentialing. You look at organizations like edX and Canvas, both of which we're partnered with, who are offering micro-masters, where you can actually study half or if not an entire master's through a purely online platform. That is a huge deal. Those are backed by organizations like MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Berkeley, and that needs to come into Africa. And the organizations here like UCT and Stellenbosch and all the big universities across Africa need to support those kind of initiatives so that our study curricula can appear in the same space.
Great, thank you so much for that excellent question. Who'd like to take us forward? Yes, I think you in the middle were first. We'll just get a microphone to you. The lady in the stripy dress.
Hi there, I'm Sam McDonald. So in order for people to get into a situation where they have work, where they are passionate, in their A+ zone, and highly motivated, engaged, and so on, they need to find work that actually fits with their intrinsic strengths. And this way they are intrinsically motivated instead of extrinsically motivated. How are you suggesting that we go right to the root source with students and actually measure who they intrinsically are. So instead of wasting money at universities and so on, that we put them into the right positions so that when they eventually ultimately finish up in a work environment, that they're motivated and passionate in what they're doing.
So sorry, I'm going to jump in here. I think from my perspective, I'd actually change the focus in terms of your question. Because if you look at South Africa, 79% of households live below the minimum wage of 3,500 Rand. You're talking about things like passion and linking their working environments to environments that would essentially bring out the best in them. And if we're not addressing the real issues that they're having right now, none of that really matters in the long term. So I would argue, let's tap into the entrepreneurial energy of our youth that we have, for example, where we can eventually work towards an idealistic environment like that.
Yeah, it's another great question, and it just makes me think that a couple of things. One is games, and dare I say gamification, is premised on this fact that you are in fact intrinsically motivated. That is the core of gamification. And I think we have only ourselves to blame in some sense, because what we've done is we've made school about extrinsics, about the grades, about the certificate, the pieces of paper, the things we've been speaking about now. So clearly there's a total overhaul to understand true motivation. I remember my sub-B teacher, yes, not grade R or whatever it's called these days, gave me a gold star, and that's motivating me to this very day. It's okay, it's not that sad. Okay, it is. It actually is. All right. So there's something there about tapping into that. I do love the concept of dignity of work, and so just being able to work, I think, is also something, and to people to understand what it means to create value in an economy and in a society. I think we are missing some really fundamental issues about that. So yeah, just two passing comments.
I think Glenn brings up a very interesting point. It does start at a young level. I mean, in terms of the question, there's an argument around choice versus assignment. We don't want to funnel people. They do that in the US, and we're not that big, we're not that capitalist. We need to educate at a much younger level, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is through distribution of quality EdTech services. The Khan Academy has proven to us that's the only way we reach some populations. Once we do that, we educate at a young level through concepts like serious games and game-based learning, because that's just way more effective than parrot fashion. We give kids a chance to be able to make a choice in terms of what makes them passionate. And that leads forward much better than it does to just assign them.
Okay, great, thank you. Who's next then? These are so much better than my questions.
So much harder.
Hi, thank you. The name is Bongsen. For me, I think one thing that has been, in taking an Afrocentric view, we are overlooking one very important aspect, the aspect of access. Because not even looking at the broader African continent, coming back home to South Africa, we have a problem of access. Now, if you are trying to cater to a certain people with EdTech, of which those very same people that you are trying to get to do not have access to the very same thing that you're trying to get it to them, it becomes a problem. Now, my question is that I've been trying to grapple with is how then do EdTech startup companies try and grapple with this question of trying to get access to those people who do not even have access to a mere basic smartphone? Thank you.
So that's a really, really important question. And I think in terms of innovation, we often get carried away with emerging technologies and fancy things. But distribution is just as much a part of innovation, and finding interesting, clever ways to reach people who don't have the access. And something I was thinking about earlier is that one of the Cohort 1 companies from Injini, I think it's Mfule, was literally working on SMS-based learning. Now, hearing that, seeing that was incredible to me, because I'm often operating at a very high technology point and thinking that everyone has high-speed internet access, everyone can watch 1080p video, but using the concept of something as simple as an SMS that, upwards of 85% of African people, even in rural areas, can get access to, that gives us the opportunity to distribute learning in a very clever way. And what we need to do is assist people, like through the Injini projects, get companies to come up with interesting new ways of distributing learning, not only ways of using new technologies.
So one word, AWS. I mean, genuinely, the move that Amazon has made to embrace Africa and the opportunity around at least solving some of the distribution challenge should be acknowledged. I think also to René's point, we forget, always we get caught up in Injini and EdTech and startups, and we've got these ideas and we don't remember our customers. We don't think about the reality that they face, and to the extent that we should change our thinking to be radically customer focused. Again, sorry to borrow from Amazon's view, but so who's the customer and who's going to pay and what are they willing to pay and how am I going to get to them? I think these are the things that should be foremost in the mind of EdTech startups, rather than I've got such a cool idea, check it, this kind of, it really is about the customer and how you're going to get it to them. I know it sounds very obvious, but so often we sit in pitches and we just hear about a brilliant idea with no understanding about how you're actually going to get somebody and how you're going to get them to pay. And the answer isn't government, by the way.
So I'm not going to provide a solution. I'm actually going to build on what you were saying because I completely agree with you. And what I was thinking when I heard that we were going to be on this panel and there were some questions that were put to us, I'm particularly concerned that EdTech, and this might be slightly controversial, but you can shout at me afterwards if you want to. I think EdTech actually runs the risk of exacerbating the digital divide. I think that if we don't start making, and I disagree with Glenn, sorry Glenn, I think if at national levels we don't start making certain policy decisions around accessibility, free data, we do run the risk of exacerbating that divide. I mean, South Africa is a point in case where only 25% of schools are tech-enabled or EdTech-enabled, and those schools are normally privileged schools. So what you're sitting with is that 75% of the rest of our schools are underserved, they're not served. So I don't have an answer to this. I'm just actually agreeing with you in terms of the point, and maybe some of the EdTech specialists can answer that.
So what we do as Future Nation Schools is very simple. We build a school in a low-cost area. You guys are all from Cape Town, so you don't know anything about Joburg, but basically Joburg has Soweto. There's a place in Joburg called Soweto, and between Soweto there's a place called Florida, and then in between there's a flare-off. It's low-cost housing, it's government-built. We've got our first campus there. Actually, it's our second campus. And effectively what we do, that area you cannot get a fiber line to. I think it's possible. Everyone else says it's impossible. But we have a 100 meg dish installation at our school there. And what we'll be doing in the future is offering a Wi-Fi or a WISP, a wireless internet solution provider, to the area there from our school. If you go to the school, it's free of charge to our learners. And if you are learners from that area and you don't have connectivity, just come to our school, sit in our media centers and enjoy the content and whatever you want to connect to, the internet's there for you. So I agree that I think government will do it. Let's all be honest. I don't think government will do it in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's going to be the private sector, and we as the private sector are the only ones that are going to really do it now in the next 2 or so years. And the private, for me, data should just be free in general to everyone. There shouldn't be a question about it. There shouldn't even be a charge on top of it. And if you're below 18 or you're a learner, you should be able to connect whenever you want, even if it's at certain places. And what we as Future Nation Schools are going to do is create those little hubs where you can go and sit. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, we don't care, just come and learn. And that's effectively how you're going to sort this issue out, because, I mean, I don't think government's going to get there anytime soon, to be completely honest. I mean, yeah.
Just to add to that, Anthony, I think this certainly doesn't solve any problems, but it is very important to note that organizations like the Shuttleworth Foundation, Siyavula, they've partnered with Vodacom and MTN to provide their education platforms free of charge. So no data usage if you're on one of those two providers. Now, that kind of zero charge function is a huge deal and more of our enabled organizations need to take part in things like that and get in touch with the cellular companies, because that's the way we're going to be able to get it out there.
Fantastic, thank you. So a quick time check. I think we've probably got time for one more question. And I think the gentleman with the white t-shirt was probably first.
No. Hi.
No? Oh,
I'm
sorry.
over here. Okay, so my question has a lot to do with the gentleman over there's question and what you've been talking about. I work in these, disadvantaged communities. We're an NGO, and we have education programs. And so we've been focusing on maths and literacy and all that kind of stuff. And very recently, our new sort of mandate is to bring technology into these spaces where people don't use computers, there's no access, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no internet, there's none of that. And so I've been connecting some school kids to these organizations that run like coding programs, web developing and all that stuff. Now, I'm not a technology person at all. I don't work in any of that. So I don't, with maths, when I tutor them, I know whether they're doing well or not. But with technology and stuff like that, coding, I have no idea what to look for. And what I do with these maths kids and these English kids is I connect them to other organizations or other opportunities if I see like a bright star. But with introducing technology into this whole program, I don't know how to spot the ones who are going to be the bright stars. And so I end up just sort of taking the ones who are doing well in maths to these organizations, and then these organizations figure out like, okay, no, this is the one who's going to be funded and stuff like that. So I just want to know, like, as a person who's in education, how can I spot who is going to see the patterns or who has a mind that is wired to coding or web developing or anything like that?
For me, that's a very easy answer. It's initiative. That's always been my first point of call. And in general, we see for the last 50 years, as technology has become more commonplace, it's the kids that took the initiative to explore it themselves, to start developing things, to get involved, to read books, to search out knowledge. That initiative is always going to be your best point of call.
I think that you don't need to solve all the problems on your own. So I love what you're saying in the question as well around collaboration and reaching into the bigger ecosystem. There are amazing programs from Code for Cape Town, We Think Code, and others who are doing incredible work to be able to identify talent, but without the barriers. So I think the good news is we're all fighting that same fight, and you don't. You just need to reach out and build that partner network.
Okay, I think we can squeeze one more in. There we go, you get a chance after all.
Cool, thank you. So firstly, I'm just going to quickly sell what we do. I think we should chat after this because us at Zelda, we're from Injini Cohort 1. We use psychometric testing to help high school students find the correct bursaries for going into university. So we can definitely have a chat. And then since Injini is the reason why I get to actually pay the staff on my team, I'm going to plug them quick as well. And answer the gentleman who was over here's question around accessibility. And I think that's why Injini exists, right? Is because only African entrepreneurs are going to solve problems for African people. Accessibility is a problem here that people in the West don't understand. And that's why we need South African startups, or not South African startups, African startups to actually be solving those problems. We have a team in the new cohort who are building Wi-Fi boxes to provide free content to students at schools. We've got Mshule, close enough though, who provide free SMS adaptive learning. It's the startups that are created on this continent that are going to be solving the problems on this continent, and that's how we create that kind of accessibility. It's not, and I disagree that it's going to be government policy that does it as well. It's government that has caused monopolies in the industry. That is why we have such high data costs. So, but it's private companies like Vodacom and MTN that are providing free access. So maybe that's the capitalist in me, the communist is dying after leaving university. But I think this is why we're all here, is to support Injini, who is supporting the startups that can provide that access. Sorry, thank you.
That's great. Welcome to the panel.
Yeah.
Did you have a question for the panel?
Yeah.
No. Okay, great. Thank you. I think we are out of time now. Firstly, thank you so much for your fantastic questions. They were far better than the ones that I had. And thank you so much to our panel, Anthony Hales, Dr. Sumari Root, Glenn Gillis and Renee Sorrell. Thank you very much for your time. So we're going to take a short break now, and we're going to kick off again in precisely 10 minutes' time. Thanks very much.
So I'd like to introduce Jamie Martin from Injini, the founder of Injini, to launch the Injini part of the event and Cohort 2. So if you could give a warm welcome to Jamie Martin to introduce Injini.
Clive, thank you very much. Everyone in the back, stop networking. It's time for the Injini section. Then we will do lots of networking. For anyone supporting Croatia, there's going to be a lot of time this evening to not be watching the football. But now's the chance to hear from 8 companies from 5 different African countries who make up Injini's second cohort. Firstly, I'd like to say a big thank you to Amazon for giving us this venue for tonight's event. I think everyone can agree that we've had a few different venues for different Injini events. They've all been fantastic in their different way, but this has been a superb setting for the launch of our second cohort. So can we have a big thank you and round of applause for Amazon, for everyone, please. Now, I know that by wearing an outfit that has become synonymous with great leadership over the last 3 weeks, I've raised expectations about my role this evening. But actually, it's very much supporting. I'm going to introduce to you, along with my colleagues from Injini, the 8 companies who make up our second cohort. But before I do that, there are some people we need to say a big thank you to. Because Injini is not just a 4-person team or an 8-company cohort, it is a coalition of people who help us get off the ground and do what we do. Primarily among those are our partners and our funders. Without them, there is no Injini, there is no program, there is no Pan-African selection process, and there are no amazing speeches about the benefits of communism and capitalism from our Cohort 1 companies. So can you please give a big round of applause and a thank you to our funders and partners, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, UBS Optimus Foundation, the Western Cape Government, and the Cape Innovation and Technology Initiative. Thank you very much. We founded Injini because education on the African continent is not working, and the problems that mean it's not working can partly be solved only through using technology. But they won't be solved by one incubator or accelerator or one company, however many countries it plays in and however many users it builds. We are all in this together, and it is a problem that we all need to solve together. And that starts tonight. So unfortunately, you aren't just here to watch the pitches, enjoy the food and the drinks, and watch England inevitably progress to the World Cup final. You're here, hopefully, to play some kind of role in helping these companies raise standards in education. So if you are an investor, tonight is the night to start the conversation with one of these companies, which might end up in an investment that helps them build the scale they need to really make an impact. If you're an education practitioner, tonight is the night to think about how you can bring them into your organization or your school network to start raising standards. And if you are an expert in a technical area or a business area, then tonight is the night to talk to me or some of the Injini team about how you can help build our program. Now, this cohort is the result of a selection process that took us right across the continent, running events ranging from Cape Town in the south, to Nairobi in the east, to Lagos and Accra in the west, and Abidjan in the French-speaking northwest, and resulted in us receiving over 800 applications from 36 different African countries. From those, we selected 15 to come and pitch, either by video or here in Cape Town, and then just 8 of those who pitched have made it to be part of our second cohort. So you really are looking at the very most promising innovations in African education tonight here on this stage. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the first of those companies. Each of them are going to give a 1-minute pitch, and then you'll get the chance to ask them some questions afterwards. The first of those companies hails from Zimbabwe. Welcome to the stage, Learning Factory.
Good evening. My name is Adi. In Zimbabwe, up to 47 students in rural areas have to share a single textbook. That's the extent to which educational resources are in short supply. At Learning Factory, we produce multimedia educational resources, which give students a visual appreciation of the real-world application of the subject matter which they are learning. We package these resources into courses which we offer online at study.co.zw, as well as offline for rural students who are off the grid and offline. Cost of access to these courses is much less than a textbook, with students typically paying half of the cost of a textbook for a year's access. By partnering with us, you give students in Zimbabwe access to high-quality content. Thank you.
Got the microphone? And from Kenya, the second company that makes up our cohort, Elimu.
When a grandmother in Kenya wants to tell stories to her children, she says, hadithi, hadithi, hadithi and Joe. Hadithi, hadithi is a literacy app with hundreds of stories written by Kenyan teachers, illustrated by artists across East Africa, and voiced by actors and celebrities. Our stories aren't about foxes and apples, and they're about mangoes and monkeys and going to the market. Once the story has captured the child's imagination, we have spelling games and activities to complete a scientifically proven pedagogy. Hadithi Hadithi is already in 4 languages in 100 schools with 10,000 students. Our Somali version is in Dadaab refugee camp, one of the biggest refugee camps in the world, and is used to teach young adults who missed out on school how to read and write. Last week, we released a version in the Google Play Store so that mothers and fathers can read stories with their children using their phones. There are 11 official languages in South Africa. There's 1,000 mother tongue languages across the continent. We're making Hadithi Hadithi in dozens of languages because allowing our children to read and write in their mother tongue is the key to unlocking their potential.
Hi, everyone. My name is Doreen Nabajo, and I'm Head of Data Insights and Analytics at Injini. A top priority for those of us that are committed to improving learning outcomes across the African continent is ensuring that we have well-trained and well-prepared teachers in every classroom. We were therefore thrilled to receive an application from the next startup. This evening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Nahana Africa from South Africa.
We live in a world with very few good science teachers, evidenced by the poor performance of students in these subjects. Imagine a world where all school children have access to high-quality science education because all schools have high-quality science teachers. Nahana Africa makes this possible. We train teachers in model-based methods of teaching to ensure a more efficient and exciting way of teaching and learning science education. Good evening, I'm Alex, co-founder and MD at Nahana Africa, and through a blended learning program, we equip science teachers with innovative ways to teach science, to instill in students critical thinking, complex problem solving, and the skill of knowledge creation. In just 5 short months since the inception of Nahana Africa, we are already producing content for our first client and leveraging their access in 5 different schools to run our pilot program. So now we can create that imagined world. Think big, think broad, Nahana Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. When the next startup applied to our program, we couldn't help but be impressed by the incredible traction they had gained in such a small period. We are incredibly impressed by this team and believe that their solution doesn't just have the potential to scale in Nigeria, but across the African continent. This evening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Bluebic from Nigeria.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Obima Chukuyem from Bluebic. I'm the co-founder of Bluebic. It's estimated that we have over 90% of schools in Africa still storing their records manually on paper. It's a very ineffective method, and it gives a lot of challenges to the educators of the schools. Some of the challenges that they encounter is it's difficult to search for information. Most of the data they have are inaccurate, and it's very expensive to store these records. In trying to store these records, they end up misplacing a lot of them or end up with many of them being destroyed. So at Bluebic, we've come up with a very low-cost cloud-based school management solution that will help schools to better store and index their information. In about 1 year that we've started, in just above 1 year, we've been able to get about 100 schools using the platform. Educators are able to better store their information and generate instant reports that give them deeper insights on the progress of their students and the overall performance of the school. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Hattersley, and I'm head of operations at Injini. The next company that I'm going to introduce uses technology in an incredibly innovative way to connect students and experts to improve their learning. They've already established partnerships with a number of educational institutions, including UCT here in Cape Town. It's my pleasure to introduce Lightbulb.
Ask the expert. That's what AWS does, and we try to enable that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Mishabi, and I'm the founder and creator of Lightbulb and Lightbulb Education. What is Lightbulb? Lightbulb is a digital learning management system. What does that mean? It is a system that uses technology to allow students to engage with subject matter experts and digital resources. How can they connect? They can connect through any internet connectable device, either a tablet, laptop, or PC as well. In terms of the experts, we generally try to look for professors, lecturers in particular expertise of their field, and it could be anybody who is teaching something which could be like industry or like artisan training and so on. In terms of other content, they normally create it themselves or use open source material, and then we make that available for the students across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Next up, we have a company coming from Nigeria who in fact work on an issue which is very relevant here in South Africa, student funding. It's my pleasure to introduce ScholarX.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bola Lawal. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ScholarX. I was once got kicked out of school because I couldn't pay my tuition in the university. There are millions of African students that can't get access to school because of lack of funding, primarily because of poverty and some economic inequalities. ScholarX is democratizing access to education for African youth ages 15 to 24 with a platform where students can easily access scholarships, help, and also access a crowdfunding platform that is funded primarily from the diaspora to help them pay for their education. ScholarX was launched in 2016, where we will have over 20,000 students on our platform, 1,000 of which have gotten full scholarships. What we are looking for is corporate partnerships with universities and other corporates. We are also looking for seed investment to be able to scale faster so that we can help keep millions of African kids in school. Thank you.
Welcome again. My name is Darian Adebulain, and I'm the education researcher at Injini. I'm here to present our final two companies. First up is a company from Nigeria leveraging technology to address high rate of employment in Nigeria. They're reskilling, upskilling young Nigerians in Africa. Please welcome to the stage Slate Cube.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Chris. I'm the co-founder and CEO at SlateCube. So back when I was in the university, I had the opportunity of turning down a job offer from Microsoft. But this is not the case with most African students. As a matter of fact, we have about 15 million graduates churned out of tertiary institutions from the continent every single year. And there's a huge disparity between what they learn in university and what employers are looking for. Our platform is a digital talent accelerator that helps African graduates build professional skill sets that employers really need, but at the same time, providing a smart AI-based solution that helps organizations effectively recruit entry-level professionals. We have an 80% success rate in converting users who are in university and graduates who are looking for jobs after they take our programs into entry-level positions in organizations. And we've also seen an increase in 25% in hiring from for entry-level positions in organizations. In the next few months, we're looking to scale this solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, SlateCube. And finally, from Ethiopia, a company bringing to you a product making learning effective. Please welcome, learning a new language effective. Please welcome Langbot.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nati, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Langbot. So by show of hands, how many of you have tried to learn a new language? Wow, okay, I didn't expect that. So it's very hard, right? We believe that's because most apps focus on memorizing vocabulary and less on conversations. So we came up with Langbot, a Facebook Messenger bot that acts like your personal language tutor and makes learning a new language feel like a game. And guess what? It's probably already on your phone. Our MVP won $20,000 from Facebook's Messenger bot challenge, and we launched our beta 6 months ago, getting over 150,000 users who've had about 9 million interactions with the bot so far. And we recently partnered with the Alliance Française in Ethiopia to come up with an amazing solution for schools that we'd love to talk to you about. Learning a new language creates a whole new world of opportunities for people. Help us make it easier for millions in Africa and around the world by supporting Langbot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Injini Cohort team. So we're now going to take a few questions for the cohort. So please feel free to either ask a generalized question, in which case I will select who answers it, or to ask questions specifically for the cohort. And I'll try and take questions in batches of 3 to test my short-term memory. So who would like to ask a question? Yeah, we got one here. Any others? Have we got a mic to go around there? Thank you. Got one gentleman here. Yeah, anyone else for a question? Okay, let's start with this gentleman and see how we do. Okay, first question. You've got to turn it on.
Oh, hello. Yeah, no, my question is for Nahana. No, elders, the thing is you say you are training science teachers. You are saying you are training science teachers. And from my understanding, within the South African context, I don't know of other countries, that most of the teachers in the country are employed by the education of basic
we built a tool for them to build French lessons for Amharic speakers. So we give this power to schools to create, these lessons to teach languages like French, Spanish, English, like from a variety of source languages. To answer your second question about differentiation with Duolingo, I think one thing that makes us different is, the first thing that makes us different is we believe getting started is the hardest part. And with Langbot, you don't have to download any app or go through a sign-up process. You just go to Messenger, search for Langbot, and you just immediately start chatting with the bot. The other thing is we put a lot of importance on learning through conversations. So you can chat with the bot to learn, you can just have random conversations with the bot to use what you learned for practice. You can also do some role plays. So I think that's one of the few things that makes us different from Duolingo. But we've taken a lot of the things that make them, like a very good, I've used Duolingo a lot. I really love the gamification. And we've tried to include that into Langbot.
Thank you, Nasi. And just with regard to African languages, so what's very cool actually about the Injini having two cohorts is we now have one company, Langbot, who are using languages as a medium which are commonly spoken in Africa to teach French, another language commonly spoken, but for example, Amharic in Ethiopia. But we have a company in cohort 1 who I believe are here this evening somewhere, Utini. Miguel, say hi at the back. So if you're looking for lessons in African languages such as Zulu and Xhosa, they allow you to learn from English into those languages. So speak to Miguel at the back if it's learning indigenous South African languages you're particularly interested in. So we've got one question on teacher training outstanding, and we will answer it. But is there maybe another one final question, preferably for a different member of the cohort? Can we get a microphone to this gentleman, and then the gentleman in the cardigan behind has got one as well? And we've got one right at the front as well. So we've got 3 more questions. Maybe I'll bring the mic down to you. You can get us started.
Had awesome ideas, but I'm curious, in 30 seconds, could each of you tell me what your business model is?
Okay. So maybe we'll do a selection of business models. Who thinks they've got a particularly interesting business model? Okay, Chris. Yeah, I think, Chris, if you come up and talk about the Slate Cube business model, I think that'd be pretty interesting.
Thank you for asking. So we realized that to effectively solve unemployment across the African continent for entry-level professionals, it doesn't make any sense to put a price on our training modules that we offer. So we've taken out entirely every cost to access any of our training programs. But on the B2B part, we aren't doing so much of education there, but we are offering a very smart AI-driven business solution that helps organizations recruit professionals and manage their progression over time. And then, of course, there's a price attached to that.
Cool. And then maybe Scholar X, do you want to come and talk about some what you guys do as well?
All right, thank you. Similarly to Slate Cube, we've taken out the business model from the B2C, and we focus a lot more on business to business. In terms of scholarship management, we have an end-to-end system that manages scholarships for a fee. We also, on our crowdfunding platform, we also manage the entire process, including paying the tuition for the students that get funded on our platform, and we charge an administration fee for that. Thank you.
Cool. And I think we maybe won't go through all of them. There's a range of other models as well. So School Pays covers off, for example, Learning Factory and also Bluebic. There's some user pay models in there as well, and there's others who have to get a bit more creative. Certainly with Elimu and Sam's done a lot of leveraging money out of the NGO sector, but is also going parent to parent as well. Right, I think we'll take the last 2 questions. So we've got 2 gentlemen at the back. So we get a microphone to that gentleman there. And see if we ask a question. And then the gentleman in the mustard sweater wants to ask one as well. Oh, sorry, sir, we will come to you, I promise.
Thanks. I'm someone who believes that with every new system, it brings forth like new challenges as well, as much as it brings advantages and all that. And since education is now moving online, And it's kind of been proven that the internet tends to be very, I don't want to say destructive, I'm actually losing the term. We get distracted quite a lot when you're working on a computer screen and all of that. So I would just like to know what systems did the guys put in place to kind of ensure that, or to mitigate that?
That's great. Thank you, sir. Can you give the microphone to the gentleman in the blue jacket right in front of you? He's right in front of you. Just give him the microphone. He's going to ask a question as well. Yes, sir.
Oh, thanks. Very quick. For organizations that are operating within the Southern African continent, like Nahana, how are they planning to bring in with unions and the so-called CPDT points that you need to offer teachers to make sure that you promote or motivate them to come into the workshop or trainings that you are doing, so that whatever you're leaving into that school is no longer a white elephant that gets stolen by somebody that stays, down the road.
Thank
they
you.
see importance in it.
Thank
How
you
are they
very
doing
much.
that?
Wonderful, thank you. So should we kick off with Nahana? You guys have got an outstanding question here from the lady as well and her question was about, are you enabling teachers' technical capacity as well as their pedagogical skills?
Was that the question? Okay. So with regards to that, I think it's important to note that in the context of South Africa, we have to appreciate the disparity in the country. And you have to work in a low-tech environment if you want to ensure that your product has traction in that environment. And with the aspiration to eventually move into a more high-tech or to introduce more high-tech solutions in that space. And so what we offer is not just about using technology, or rather, let me say, it's not just about implementing tech into the school. Tech is a means to deliver our content. And so it's largely about training teachers and creating a culture shift within schools around education and around science education, particularly with the use of tech. But it can survive in a low-tech environment as well. And I think that's what's mostly important in the context of South Africa. And I think that does come back to the gentleman's question, who I can't see now in the audience. Oh, there we go. I think when you ask the question about the political landscape, especially around unions, it definitely depends on where you're operating in the country. And I think in a lot of parts of the country, obviously unions can be a stifling block, but in other parts of the country, you'll find that unions are actually incredibly useful and want to work with organizations to begin to employ more effective solutions in the school space. And what's important, again, goes back to the tech thing. I think if you look in Joburg, at least, or Gauteng online, massive challenges around that, where they delivered all these tablets to schools that don't get used well, because you have all this infrastructure, but you haven't given teachers the means to use that kind of infrastructure. nor have you created a culture of integrating that into the sector. So it's a box-ticking exercise. Oh, we've delivered tablets, and now we're more tech-savvy than we were before. These are problems and challenges that we're facing, and that's why technology is simply a tool to be used. And I think when you talk about of course it has to do with political will, and I think that goes back to the earlier gentleman's question when he was talking about, well, how do you get government to help in these kinds of sectors? And the truth is that in parts government is willing to help. They're slow, but I think the willingness in parts, in certain parts are definitely there, but that's why you've got to get creative with the kind of partnerships you create, especially those bodies that operate very closely with government, but are definitely more useful in creating traction with your product. And so it's a partnership and collaboration problem. It's not so much a resource problem. And I think if everybody can collaborate and leverage off of each other's ideas and access, and that's why we're leveraging off of another startup's access to 5 schools, you can begin to draw on those kinds of resources and create or rather, let me say, an end-to-end solutions for most schools. Awesome. So I hope that answers everybody's question. Thanks.
I think that answered all the questions that have been asked, actually, the whole evening. So it's perfect. Okay, does one of the Injini companies, I don't mind who it is, someone who hasn't spoken yet maybe, want to come up, Addy, take it? To come up and take the gentleman's question about the divide. Like, how were you worried about the divide? Will tech divide people more? That kind of thing.
Right. What we do at Learning Factory is we are addressing the challenge of lack of access to educational resources. Now, traditionally, this challenge has been addressed by providing textbooks, and we're providing multimedia resources. And what that means is teachers as well as students need to upskill. They need to learn digital literacy skills and so forth, right? and we are providing those skills. First of all, we work with teachers in developing the content. Therefore, there will be no resistance from the teachers as well as school administrators in adopting. But then we provide teachers with the skills to be able to use these resources effectively. With the study box, we provide access to these resources as if you were on the internet. And to deal with the issue of distraction while you're using the internet, the study box allows users to access only the content which we have packaged. Of course, you can have an internet connection to the study box, but we've limited the access that you have to other resources when you're using the study box. So it's what we've packaged as well as curated content which is available on the internet. I hope that's answered.
Great answer. Last answer of the night is going to go to Alan. It's going to be briefer.
I know the gentleman went with regards to the CPD points. So what we've done in the past is we've worked with companies who do training. I think Macmillan and a couple of other publishers have done teacher trainings in different areas. And what happens is they'll go there, do the training for about 3-4 days, and then they'll leave. And what ends up happening is that what we're trying to do is to deploy services such that even if they do the training and then after that they can still utilize the technology to still engage with these trainers no matter where they come from. Because usually they send them from Johannesburg or Western Cape to, for instance, like the Eastern Cape region. And so at the end of the day, they'll just say, here's a couple of instruction guides on like physics or maths. And then at the end of the day, when they leave, those teachers and educators have no clue about what's going on and don't have the ability to follow up. So what we try to do is use technology to try and engage with those people for a lengthier period of time without them having to travel backwards and forwards and having trainings every so often.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Fantastic. I know lots of people have got their hands up for questions, but there is a football game on at 8 o'clock that I in particular really want to watch. So I'm going to draw it to a close there. So thank you all very, very much for coming tonight. Thank you all very much for your questions. Please do catch up with these guys afterwards. All the companies are up there. You know who they are. All their email addresses are up all the way through. We'll be sending those round as well after the event. Please do engage with guys as much as possible. Please do stay, watch the football, enjoy the drinks. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you again to Amazon and all of our funders and partners for making Injini Cohort 2 possible. Thank you very much.